For USCFootball.com, I'm Jack Smith alongside Connor Morrissette for instant analysis from USC's Wednesday practice of the bye week. And Connor, what were some of your biggest practice observations today?
Jack, great to be with you, my friend. To start, Raesjon Davis. Chris and I talked so much about rep hierarchy during these linebacker drills all offseason, and to start the year, Mason Cobb was taking those first-team reps. Today, Raesjon Davis took the first rep of a linebacker drill, so I shouldn't say first-team reps. He was just the first guy to go through this linebacker drill. And to some people, that might be nothing, but to us, that's important. A guy taking the initiative. Raesjon Davis yesterday at practice, he was so smiley. He seems like he's really happy with his role right now, and he wants more. And he wants to, as other guys get healthy, he wants to continue to do really well. So I noticed Raesjon Davis looked good and took a rep and did well to start the practice today.
And then we got to talk with one big coach after practice. Yesterday's two, you got the two big guns in Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch. Today, it's always a combination of Dennis Simmons or Josh Henson. Today, we got Josh Henson. What were some of your biggest takeaways from what he had to say?
It looks like the starting five unit with the offensive line is set, and he said it's just the guys who've been the most consistent. It was the group that most USC fans expected to begin the year. That didn't happen against San Jose State, but now it's that usual five. And then the second-team offensive line, for as happy as he's been with that first-team group, Henson was not happy with the second-team group. He didn't say the player by name, but he said one spot on the line really held the whole team back in that second half when Miller Moss and the offense struggled to run the ball and struggled in the screen game. So one player has had a tough week. Not exactly sure who that is. Going to have to look back and check on the film. But the second-team offensive line wasn't that great. The first-team offensive line was great. And I think most USC fans felt the same way.
Yeah, that was interesting. Lincoln Riley said after the game that he was disappointed in the way the second-team offensive line went out there and played, almost as if they didn't fully seize their opportunity to get to play an entire half. But I think Henson was kind of, I guess he was a little bit nicer about it, just saying, I know maybe four guys on that line weren't doing a poor job, but there was one guy on the line that kind of put things all out of whack, and when one thing's off, the entire five can look off at some point. So it's really, you got to have five guys all working together as a team, and that's how you get that full offensive line. But he was asked kind of specifically about how he thought the first team played in the first half and how that related to the offense. What did you take away from that?
Yeah, he said, similarly to what Lincoln Riley said, when all three phases are clicking, this is what it can look like. This is what happens when we're really firing on all cylinders. So that, to me, said that he was really happy with that first-team offensive line. And how could you not be? Jarrett Kingston on one play blocked three different guys when Stanford only rushed three. So as the guard, he kind of could go wherever he wanted, and he just got three blocks in. He said Jonah Monheim sent him that clip and said, shout out to Jarrett for blocking three guys on this play. So really happy with that first-team group. I thought it was interesting, too, though. Gino Quinones goes out with an injury, and Coach Henson talked all about how really upset he was that Gino's done for the year, but he mentioned Alani Noa having to step into that Quinones role, and it looks like if someone else, for whatever reason, can't play on the inside of that line, Alani will have a really great shot to play a lot.
He was kind of asked point blank about the idea of a redshirt, and he's like, no. Yeah. Alani Noa has to be ready to play. So that's something to look out for coming out of the bye for Trojan fans. I think the way that Henson put it was really great, too, is he was basically saying the offensive line didn't make any mistakes to stall drives like they had in the first couple weeks for USC, and you can see what the offense is going to look like. If the offensive line isn't getting in the way, obviously they can put up a lot of points. And he basically said, yeah, they went in at halftime. Lincoln Riley's like, this is what we can look like as a football team when not only, all parts of the offense are working together, but all three sides of the football team are working together. And, obviously they put up 49 points in the first half, so it was pretty good.
It's usually good when you don't mention the offensive line, because if you're talking about them, someone's messing up and your quarterback's getting sacked and your running back is losing yards. So the fact that after the game people are happy with the protection, and there was some talk about the offensive line, that's good. But really, you want to be talking about Caleb Williams and scoring 49 points at halftime, and the defense knocking the quarterback out, Solomon Byrd, in the second quarter with a strip sack. That's what you want to focus on. So the less, and I think Coach Henson knows that too, the less we talk about the offensive line, it's usually the better in football.
It feels like good offensive line play doesn't pop up while you're watching the game. It pops up a couple days later on film, whereas bad offensive line play, it'll show up during the game. So if you don't hear anything about the offensive line during the game, and then you start hearing about them a couple days later when that Jarrett Kingston highlight comes out or some other things like that, that's when you know that an offensive line is playing well. We also got some other notes. What was the next biggest one that you want to move on to?
So Jarrett Kingston, talking with him, I asked what he thought about not starting that first game and if that sent him a message, and he said, I just needed to practice better, just needed to be more consistent. And I asked him how he responded to not starting against San Jose State when everyone expected him to. He was listed on the first team on the USC depth chart, so it was kind of a surprise that he didn't, and he just said, yeah, I needed to be better, and I've learned from it, and now we're ready to go. So Coach Henson said that he didn't want to send any messages, he just played the best guys who practiced the best during that first game, but it looks like for Kingston, the standard was kind of set, and he's taken that and run with it.
Yeah, it definitely feels like USC has that starting five. I got to talk to Christian Roland-Wallace, which I believe was the first time we've talked to him since he was suspended for the first half of the game a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him what was his initial reaction, and he kind of just said it came out of nowhere, that he was very surprised that ended up happening. He said he remembered what happened last year, but didn't really feel like he played a big enough role in it to get suspended, and it was clear he had moved on from it, obviously played the full game against Stanford, wasn't around his head anymore, but had to just ask him about it because it was such a big deal that Lincoln Riley, took minutes out of his press conference alone to really send a message to the Pac-12 and vouch for Christian and his personality and stuff like that. But he also just mentioned when I asked him about, did you get a chance to go back and watch the play, because the coaches said they did, and he said there just really wasn't video evidence of what the Pac-12 said happened, and so he wanted to move on from it, but it was interesting to hear his reaction because we haven't talked to him since he was suspended.
It just seemed like a communication fail on all fronts, because if you do get ejected, then it makes sense, you get suspended, but if he didn't feel like he should have been ejected, it was the end of the year, and Arizona didn't make a bowl game, so they probably just packed everything up, and they didn't want to appeal a potential suspension because, A, he's not even on the team anymore, but B, so much can change right when that season ends. So I'm sure maybe they forgot. The Pac-12, it sounds like, forgot to alert USC and Arizona. Arizona State somehow knew that some suspensions were coming, and they planned for that, but Arizona and USC didn't. And then when USC said to the Pac-12, hey, you didn't tell us about it, they said, we're just going to run with this, and our decision's final. So I don't think anyone communicated very well in the situation, and I'm glad that Christian Roland-Wallace is back and able to play full games in the future.
Kind of the final note of the day is there were two freshman skill position players that we got to talk to. One was the media debut for Quentin Joyner. The other is Zachariah Branch, who feels like we talk to every week at this point, and he's getting just so good at answering all the questions about, well, do you think they shouldn't kick you anymore? He gets that question a lot, but it was kind of two different polar opposites because we haven't talked to Joyner yet. We have talked to Branch so much. What have you taken away from both of those guys?
After you watch this on YouTube and you head over to the Joyner interview, you might have to crank the volume a little bit. Very soft-spoken kid, very shy. It was really one of his first times. It was the first time talking to the USC media, but it seemed like he hadn't talked to too many media people in high school either. Just really reserved, really shy. He was really excited about it too, but just a guy who will learn from this experience talking to the media, and it looks like he's a lot more comfortable playing football out there on the football field. I don't think that makes him nervous, but I think talking to media people does. But Chris, our colleague at USCfootball.com, asked him, why is it so hard for defenses to take you down? And he was like, I don't know, that's a good question. Defenses ask me that, guys on defense ask me that all the time. I don't really know why I'm so hard to bring down. That's a great question. So I thought that was funny, and Chris highlighted that to us as something that we should share. Really a funny story there, but I just think he's a guy who he maybe didn't expect to have a role. He came out, proved that he deserved to have a role, has a role now, and talking to the media, all USC freshmen who have contributed in the game for the most part have done that so far, so that's really great to see. A lot of these guys who are playing early are speaking with us, and it's great to meet them and interact with them.
He also said he's heard from running back coach Kyle McDonald saying, nice work at what you've done so far, and more is coming. So it's clear that Joyner is going to be a big piece of this backfield throughout this season and also going into the future. It really seems like, he's that running back of the future for USC. He's that freshman that has stepped up when, him and Amarion Peterson were coming into the class. Joyner's the one that has gotten the carries, and it seems like he's going to get more of them. It also seemed like, according to Chris and some of the other media members, that he is very comfortable with the older guys in the room, likes being with them, Austin Jones and Marshawn Lloyd, who have been class acts talking with us, and it doesn't surprise me one bit that the younger guys really take to them because they are great veterans.
It looks like the young guys have really, all of them have been mentored really well. Talking to Zachariah, he mentioned Taj Washington and Mario Williams have taken him under their wing and really helped him. And Deuce Robinson mentioned the older receivers are like his older brothers, and Deuce Robinson has two younger brothers, so he's never really experienced that younger brother feel before. The chemistry and camaraderie, we cover the team. I don't want to be a homer about it, but it just seems a little bit different than a lot of teams I've been around in the past. These guys all really do like each other. And are there issues, here, there, small little things? Sure, that's going to happen on every team. But the overwhelming feeling that I get is that this is one of the closest teams that I've been around, and it's really impressive. These guys really care about each other. The chemistry is really good.
And when it comes to Branch, I know USC fans have lofty aspirations for what he could end up being. It seems like he's got the same for himself. Do you want to kind of break that down?
Sure. So he's played 3 games, and when he signed to USC, he texted Coach Dennis Simmons, the receivers coach, and said, these are some of the goals I have. He's already accomplished one of the 4 that he mentioned today, starting as a freshman. So I don't know if he's technically a starter at receiver, but he's that first guy in the punt unit, the kick return unit. So we're giving him a check for that. That's checked off. 3 other goals are really lofty. National championship, Biletnikoff winner, Heisman winner. So this year, are those possible? Maybe one of them is. We'll see what happens down the line. I think it's really interesting how high that this guy's goals are. And, I mean, the sky's the limit for Zachariah Branch, and through 3 games, I'm not going to say he can't accomplish what he set out to do. He's really impressed, and we see with some of these freshmen and younger guys, it's hard to come out and make an impact right away, and he's made a huge impact to start the year. He's really motivated. He shook every media member's hand after. There are like 20 people out there today. He is wise beyond his years. That's what Coach Simmons said on Trojans Live, too. He prepares light years older than he is. Maybe that didn't make sense, but I think he used the word light years. He is just so smart, so talented, and if you're a USC fan, Caleb Williams, you're the most excited to watch him every week. I think Zachariah Branch might be number 2.
Is clearly not lacking in confidence either. I mean, setting those goals, while they do seem lofty, you can't blame a kid for going out there and as for talented as he is, dreaming big. I mean, Caleb Williams has said he wants to win 8 Super Bowls because Tom Brady's got 7, so he wants to break the record. So, these are the kind of guys that are so talented that they set these goals because maybe they don't know whether it's going to happen, but they aren't going to doubt themselves, which I think is a commendable thing. Are there any other takeaways that you had from practice today? There's no game this weekend, so this is really the last kind of instant analysis that we're going to have because they're not preparing to play anyone on Saturday, but did you have any other final notes?
I did have a few other notes from watching practice, as you saw me glance down at my notebook there. So Zachariah Branch, he's just dancing, having fun, and during the kickoff that they do before the practice begins, when guys who return the kicks just practice from the machine kicks the ball off, he caught it, and he caught it with one hand, not one arm, so he just caught the ball like in spiraling or spinning like a kick, and he just grabbed it with his hand. That was amazing. He was dancing, like I said, just having a great time. Just couldn't be in a better spot. The Raesjon note I hit on earlier, the defense, they were doing stations today from what we were able to see, and that's nothing new. It's cool to see all the position groups run through the same 4 stations all together, and then we have to go after that, but we got to see the full rotation. And then Romello Height, he's lined up at rush end, defensive end. Today he was with that defensive end group, and he's listed as the rush end on the roster, but he's played more defensive end, and him and Anthony Lucas were defensive ends. I think that just goes to show there's a lot of guys on this roster who can play both sides. Height and Anthony Lucas can do that. Lucas was with the defensive ends, even though he's played a lot of rush end. It's just cool that there are guys who are so versatile, and it looks like Jamil Muhammad is the surefire rush end, Solomon Byrd is the surefire defensive end. After that, some guys can mix and match.
Well, and it felt like Romello Height's a guy that had a pretty impressive game against Stanford, so we'll see how he progresses throughout the rest of the season. But that's all we've got for you guys basically for this entire week. We'll have a Lincoln Riley Zoom tomorrow, which we'll put out tweets about that. There'll be a thread on the Peristyle, so make sure you're a member there. You can check out all the articles written about today, different interviews here on the site. But for Connor Morrissette, I'm Jack Smith. Check out uscfootball.com for more.